how the Israel lobby controls some of the information, not just the information, but what the government does, and why it is that you see a vote of 97-0 by the U.S. Senate to send more aid, quote unquote, weaponry, etc., to Israel, to not demand a ceasefire. This is back several days ago, pre this current ceasefire. But 97-0. How is it that you end up with it that one-sided, that biased? How is it you end up with both corporate parties exactly on the same page on this? Not even a soul voting against it. And then in the House, only a handful, I don't know what the actual number was, I think it was maybe 12 or something, voted against the so-called support for Israel. And yes, part of it is simply by paying and bribing these politicians, right? Part of it, and you can view all these numbers at Open Secrets. Part of it is just by giving huge donations to these politicians in the United States. The number one on the list, by the way, for senators all time. So he's not a senator now, but he was number one on the list of receiving money from Israel lobby groups, which is AIPAC, and there's some other, NORPAC, I think is another one. There's a few others. Number one on the list of senators all time. Can you guess who it is? Anybody want to throw in some guesses? Joseph Biden, number one recipient of Israel money to politicians. Number three is something like number 3 on the list is Hillary Clinton, even though she wasn't in the Senate nearly as long as Biden was. But so, yes, part of it is just bribing them, right? Part of it is paying for their campaigns and they stick with it. But an important aspect of it that is not really talked about enough is the fact that they also threaten politicians who start to go against Israel, start to support BDS, even just saying things like Palestine should be free. These things that you and I may take for granted, even just saying things like that. What they do is AIPAC, these others, NORPAC, the Israel lobby groups, they will fund a candidate to kick that guy or woman out of office. And they may fund them to some crazy amount in order to try their best to get them out of office. And that aspect of it will not show up on the donations, right? Because you find out that someone lost an election. It's not, you don't often connect it to like, oh, the Israel lobby was carefully making sure that person lost their election. So the current biggest example, right, would be Rashida Tlaib. Now, they want to get her, they desperately want to get her out of office. She is one of a tiny number of politicians in the House who say free Palestine, who say that Israel is an apartheid state, who actually use those words, who voted against the quote unquote more aid to Israel. And they are doing their best to fund opposition to her and get her out of Congress, because just that little tiny handful in the House is too much for the Israel lobby, because just that tiny little bit of truth is dangerous. They, of course, got Congress to censure her just a few days ago for daring to say that Palestine should be free. But here's how bad it is. So there is another politician in Michigan. He's a wealthy businessman named, last name's Nasser. First name Baidu. Is that it? Anyway, I'll call him Nasser. Anyway, wealthy businessman. He's not running against Rashida Tlaib. He's running for the Senate in Michigan. And watch what he had to say as to what they did to try and get Rashida Tlaib out of office. The amount of money being thrown around.
I was offered $20 million to withdraw from the senatorial race and run against my friend Rashida Tlaib. The pro-Israel lobby will go to any length to remove anybody from the U.S. Congress that has any opposition to their agenda and their total, unequivocal support for Israel, good, bad, or indifferent. We need to make sure that money is not the main catalyst to get people elected, because the pro-Israel lobby is only tool, and what they use to threaten politicians is the amount of money they're going to spend against them or for them. America, let's come together and elect people who truly represent our values.
So, and he's turning it into a campaign ad moment, which whatever, it doesn't really matter. But the point is, he was offered $20 million. They can offer that amount of money as long as it doesn't have to do with specifically that group donating to a politician. So it doesn't have to be AIPAC donated to, which is all that you see in the numbers when you look up how much AIPAC is donated. AIPAC can go to various big funders, various wealthy people that they have connections with, and say, hey, we need you to fund this guy. So we're trying to get him $20 million. And they can do it. And it has nothing to do with AIPAC. Sure, the phone call's been made. And this is how our campaign finance system is rigged. Sure, AIPAC may have made the phone calls. They may have set it all up. They may have gotten the guy to run. They may have helped fund his campaign by making those phone calls. But none of that shows up on the books because it's a wealthy investor who works with AIPAC, gets phone calls from AIPAC and goes, sure, I'll donate to that, et cetera. Or you can donate to their individuals can donate to their super PACs an unlimited amount and pretend to be separate from the candidate. It's not even important really how it works. The point is you can donate a limitless amount of money if it's not directly to the candidate. It's the idea that we have any kind of campaign finance regulations is a joke. It's an open joke that our rich can't fund and decide who wins all of these elections. And this is something that I think I'm the only person to talk about. I honestly have not heard almost anyone at least phrase it in this way. That yes, the candidate who spends not this first part, you've probably heard this from other people, but the candidate who spends the most, meaning has the most donations generally, the candidate who spends the most in the Senate wins about 90% of the time. The candidate who spends the most in the House wins about 80-some percent, 85% of the time, or something like that. Or maybe I have those backwards. Maybe it's 90% in the House, 85% in the Senate. So basically, the person with the most money wins most of the time. And you may look at those numbers and go, here's the part I've never heard anyone else say. You may look at those numbers and go, well, at least 15% of the time, you have the people who didn't get the most money winning the office. But here's where it gets really sneaky. The two candidates who spend the most on the election win 100% of the time. And those two candidates are always the two corporate parties who agree 100% on Israel, agree 100% on capitalism, agree 100% on doing nothing about climate crisis, agree 100% on big pharma, big ag, big oil, all of them, big banks. And so And I know some of you may go, well, often it's only two parties running. Well, that's not usually true. Usually there is a third party running. Usually there is someone else in the larger races, and they lose 100% of the time. So this means that 100% of the time, the two corporate parties have a lock on this system. They own it, and they can buy it out every single time. And I, have not heard people discuss it in that way. It's people often discuss about how bad the funding is, but the 100% number is rarely brought up.